Live stream 22, and the topics tonight are going to be covering the ATF and their move on force reset triggers. There's also a couple other things in the ATF world. Apparently, they have a national registry that's got over 1 billion firearms registered into it. And there's another thing going on in San Jose where they were pushing a bill to require firearm insurance, which is actually something we were talking about a live stream or so ago, and paying an annual fee if you're a gun owner. So hey, good luck with that, even in the People's Republic of Communist California. I just don't see that one lasting the course. But anyways, we're going to kick those subjects around. Obviously, I anticipate that the ATF's attack on force reset triggers will occupy most of that time. The second topic tonight is going to be over the apparent, and I'm not really spun up on this, so I'm going to default to the other guys on this, but apparently there's a big protest in Canada with the truckers. Protesting their prime minister's draconian freaking COVID restrictions, like many of the left-wing states here in the United States. So we'll talk about that tonight, and that should be our live stream, guys. So going around the table, introducing everybody. No stranger to this live stream, we got Les at Pegasus Test. He has his own YouTube channel. Les is a good friend of mine. He's a black hat instructor at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. He was a Marine in the early 90s. He is a veteran of Desert Storm, and he also has his own logistics company. So just a wealth of knowledge. Always a pleasure to have you on, bud. Next, we got my good buddy Chad Kata, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. Served with him in Afghanistan. He's a veteran of OIF-1 and OIF-2, fought in the Fallujah offensive. He's a good friend of mine. He's studying to get his doctorate in military history. And again, wealth of knowledge. Always a pleasure having him on. Next, we have Mike Klein of Klein Machining. Mike is a instructor, black hat instructor at the One Shepherd Leadership Institute. He has his own company that makes light support weapons. So if you guys haven't seen it yet, I've done videos over it. So has Les with Pegasus Tests. And essentially, they're civilian legal RPKs. And we talked about these at length. And they're just fantastic. And he's kind of our subject matter expert on force reset triggers and binary triggers. So I thought it would be a good addition to bring him on tonight. So, Mike, glad to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We got the good doc, Dr. Christopher Larson, U.S. Army veteran, served in Korea. He's an accomplished author. Oh, my goodness. You're killing me. He's an accomplished author. He's written many books on small unit tactics. He's the original founder of the One Shepherd Leadership Institute, going 40 years strong. He's always a plethora of knowledge and always a good time having you on, Doc. And he's our subject matter expert for sex robots. All right, last but not least, got the good Bruce at Camp Armament. You should be no stranger if you guys watch my YouTube channel for any amount of time. You should recognize this guy. Bruce is my right-hand man. He's got his own YouTube channel called Bruce at Camp Armament. He also has a significant following on Instagram. Be sure to check him out. But Bruce, for the longest time, has been our civilian perspective in the chat. He's a former aircraft mechanic. He's been to a lot of tactical schools, and he just always brings an excellent perspective to the chat. Bruce, glad to have you on tonight, man. We saw you were running late. We just figured your fluffer was finishing you up before you went live.
Yeah, I'm good and fluffed.
All right, guys. That is our panel tonight. So with that being said, I ain't even going to ask who's going to take it. Let's kick it off.
Gee, it's like we've established a trend here or something. So ATF or not ATF officially, but there's been a leaked email or letter saying that they're going to go after forced reset triggers, and that when they go into an establishment selling them, that they're going to ask them to surrender their property, or if the establishment refuses to turn it over willingly, they'll just confiscate it. This is some kind of internal memorandum. I can't comment on the officiality of it because I just don't know. But on the face of it, it looks like the ATF is preparing to move against forced reset triggers, and also I understand the wide open trigger as well. A lot of people have been talking about this on YouTube and the web. the source I'll defer to is Matt Larissé over at Fudbusters. He's saying the way that the forced reset trigger is designed, that they kind of really understood the rules and that they are fully in compliance with the law. So ATF is out on a limb. So the real question is here, is ATF doing this maybe as a scare tactic to just kill sales of it because everybody thinks they're going to get in trouble? Or is this like an internal thing where they're rooting out a mole because this is a leaked email? Or is this the administration is feeling empowered or scared because the next election is not looking good for them? Don't know where this is coming from, but at the other hand, I don't think it's good for gun owners regardless of which way it goes. Personally, the whole binary trigger concept, to me, I'm of a mixed mind of it. It definitely works awesome for our training at One Shepherd. And with very little training, the LSW gunners can put out an impressive rate of fire. I know Doc did some measurements when we did it, and we were pretty much mimicking it about right around 700 rounds per minute. With live ammo, I'm not sold on it yet. Doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It just means I personally haven't embraced the concept with live ammo. But it's an interesting thing because clearly binary type triggers are designed to be a workaround for the NFA and nothing else. Somebody's got to come in behind me there. Come on, man. I didn't knock it out of the park that good.
I'll jump in. I just, we've got some experts in the house. So, hey, so let's clear up a couple of things. First off, as of yet, they're not going after binary triggers. It is the hard reset. So first things first.
Reset. Yeah, exactly.
The link. Yeah, there you go. The leaked email was for the BATF to go after point of sales, manufacturer, retailers, and distributors, not after buyers. So that's the second thing that is a critical issue here. So they're going after the hard reset, also known as forced reset, also known as wide open triggers. And I'm not sure, by the way, what's really confusing here in this situation is this is all happening. So this could be a whole second action to another situation. Look, the situation is patent law. Back up. This is a patent law issue. It's not what you guys are thinking, or it might be. The patent law is simply this. There's one Mr. Graves who held the patent on a hard reset trigger. He sold the license to Wolf Tactical, and then Wolf Tactical gave at least license to manufacture, if not actually sold the patent to Rare Breed Triggers, right? And they started actually manufacturing this hard reset trigger as the FRT 15. Now, Graves' understanding of that was that while Rare Breed Triggers had the license to operate, that they did not actually own the license. They couldn't just make it under that license. And so Graves himself went, as well as several others, went and said, oh, okay, well, I'm going to build my own. And this is where you see several come into it. Wide open trigger is one of them. All right. So now there was a court injunction to stop manufacturing on behalf of FRT, Rare Breed Triggers. They told Wide Open Triggers, stop manufacturing. And it looked like Wide Open Triggers was just done. Well, lo and behold, very, very recently, there was a lack of meeting the timeline set by the court by Rare Breed Triggers. And so the court injunction was vacated, meaning that as of basically today, Wide Open Triggers et al. Can continue making hard reset triggers. So this whole thing is, at least in part, is about a patent law. And understandably, a lot of gun owners and a lot of clients are upset with both of them saying, stop your fighting and start building as many of these as you possibly can. There need to be 2 in every household. And so that's one part of the story. Now, is the BATF seizure part of this, because Rare Breed Triggers wasn't responding quick enough to the court timelines, or is this a whole different bump stock thing going on by BATF, an overreach of administrative law, de facto law. I'm not sure, and I'll kick it back to you guys.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Doc, because that was kind of where I was going with it. And you actually seem a little more spun up on it than I am, although I tried to get caught up on it a little bit today in anticipation for this live stream. I still have quite a few questions. So it looks like rare breed triggers were producing their product, and the BATF at some point told them to stop it. And they said, nope, we're going to keep doing it. We have a letter from you telling us to stop, but your reasoning for telling us to stop, that essentially you feel this is a machine gun part. Our lawyers don't agree with you, and they don't believe it meets the definition of a machine gun. Therefore, we'll see you in court. And that's been unfolding. They've continued to push their product, even though they've basically got a cease and desist letter from the ATF. And obviously that doesn't make the ATF very happy, but I think it's fine as long as, it's going through the courts. I think the problem is that there is the potential that should, for whatever reason, the ATF win the case, you've got a bunch of people with parts that are going to have to be confiscated, turned in, whatever, assuming that those owners are going to comply with the law. Who knows where that goes, but we're not there yet. And then secondly, like you said, Wide Open Triggers is producing a competitor's product. It's different. It's not the same, but that's tied up in court too, because you've got basically Rare Breed Triggers that sued Wide Open Triggers going, you're infringing on our patent and you're creating a product just like ours. There was a judge that ruled that Wide Open Triggers must stop selling those parts and distributing those parts. I think that got overturned. It's going back and forth. So again, you've got, it could be a patent issue, but I guess my question is, since when does the BATF get involved in patents? Even if they're firearm related, that's not really the BATF's job. Surely there's some other avenue where anyone with a patent can go and say, hey, there's a patent infringement here. And there's some bureau that oversees that and makes a decision on that. Or they go through civil court and say, hey, this person copied my product. I want to sue them. And it unfolds that way. I've never before seen the BATF any time in my lifetime that I can think of get involved with any type of patent infringement. So yeah, there's a lot of red flags from gun owners, and rightfully so. I understand why, but I'm not completely sold on the idea that, this is the Gestapo, or this is a giant government taking over everybody's firearms and kicking their doors in yet. But I have questions, and I don't know why they're seizing anything. As far as I know, Wide Open Triggers has not been contacted by the BATF telling them to stop selling their product. So why would the BATF be going around and confiscating anything? I'm not sure about that. So maybe you guys can chime in.
Well, yeah, I was thinking this might be kind of a scare tactic operation. They just let this email be quote unquote leaked. So it's get out there. We're all talking about it. Everybody's worried. This kind of, in a way, smacks of that raid on Polymer 80 a couple of years ago when they went after the buy, build, shoot kits, because ATF wasn't saying to Polymer 80, you can't sell your frame, your 80% frame. They didn't tell them they couldn't do that. What they were saying is, you can't sell this kit that has everything in it to build the gun. That's a gun. And it was a weird interpretation. And if memory serves, it worked out in Polymer 80's favor, but it didn't help sales, that's for sure, because everybody was worried about records being seized and all things like that. So maybe this is just a giant scare tactic.
Yeah, I actually ascribe to that a little bit. And part of it is us as gun owners. A lot of us kind of feel going into purchasing these triggers, or desire to purchase one of these triggers, is almost like a too good to be true type thing. So when something pops up that says, oh, this is it, this is the fun time's over, then you already are kind of set in your mind that it's going to happen. It's going to happen swiftly. But the truth of it is, if you look at what happened with bump stocks, and you look at what they had been trying to do with the pistol braces and things of that nature, it's a long, drawn-out process. I mean, there's usually a notification, an intent, for, and then ask questions. I mean, it's a years long process before any of this stuff starts actually getting taken off the street. And the truth of it is, like, look at bump stocks. They didn't go door to door with that at all. It was basically, okay, we're going to shut down these manufacturers. We're going to get it out of distribution. And then at the end of the day, hey, dude, if you're caught with this thing, then you were doing you're doing something naughty, and you're going to get punished accordingly. But it wasn't kicking doors and throwing flashbangs in people's houses.
Yeah, I'm not sure they have the manpower to go door to door either. They're dealing with a lot of things, bigger picture things right now, especially with the drug problems that we're having come in, the cartels and things like that on the border. I'm not sure they have the manpower to go door to door to do that either. I don't really have a dog in this fight, so my opinion is quite limited. I think the ATF confiscating anything without a congressional mandate is pretty scary. You basically have unelected bureaucrats going around changing the definition of what a machine gun is, what a machine gun isn't. I think it's time we kind of put these terms before maybe Congress and get some some final definitions through a democratic process instead of having the courts define it, because these are, again, appointed judges that are calling what these things are. So, and you've got we've got some shining stars in Congress as well, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's kind of on the fringes sometimes of her political opinions are, but she called for the disbandment of the ATF, wrote a letter, things like that. Ted Cruz, a big Second Amendment guy. So, maybe it's time to give Congress a shot with some of these definitions and see what it is. That's all I got. What is happening?
Okay, so it looks like Brent may be on the side of confiscation at this point. Old comrade Brzezinski there.
It's a trap.
Chad, I'll say this to your point. I think this is super important. There's a lot of there's issues when you let judges decide these things. When you let judges look at, for example, 2 trigger packs, and if a judge is not a gun person at all, they do look the same, right? And the judge is going to go, hey, this kind of does look alike. Maybe there is a patent infringement. Or if you get someone that's really in the know on firearms, they'll clearly look at those two and go, these are nothing alike. I'm throwing this case out. That all comes down to the personal interpretation of the judge at the end of the day. So I think we have to be careful with those things. And the same thing is true with what is a machine gun. I mean, I just think that all Americans feel a bit betrayed in that we as Americans have been playing by the rules. The feds come out and they go, listen, we're going to tax all machine guns. And we go, all right, okay. And then they go, but we're going to no longer issue tax stamps. So you can no longer have one, even if you want one. We're going to require a tax stamp, and then we're going to refuse to issue the tax stamp. What happens? Over time, machine gun prices go up to where the common man can't afford it. And only those that can afford them aren't going out shooting them a lot because they're not wanting to put a lot of wear and tear on something that is now essentially a collectible antique, not something that's actually useful. So Americans, and their great ingenuity, as they have always had, that's one of the things that's always impressed me with America, is they sit down and they start engineering. How do we get around this? How can we play by the rules, create a product that is not technically a machine gun, but can still let people fire multiple rounds quickly? And that's what we've seen explode really in the last 10, 15 years with binary triggers and wide open triggers, forced reset triggers, all these different things. They're all compliant within the letter of the law. They are not machine guns, so they should not be regulated. And we feel betrayed because now the BATF has come out and said, we're going to change the rules then, because you've managed to accomplish something we don't want you to accomplish. Even though you're not doing anything illegal, we're going to make it now illegal, and we're going to go around and start confiscating everything that you've got and putting people in jail who aren't really breaking any technical law. And on top of that, things look at like the bump stock. They're BATF approved. You look at braces, the BATF has approved those. The manufacturer, the designer, the engineers went through and says, what do you think about this? Can I make this? And they go, sure, that's fine. There's not a problem with that. Then when it becomes popular, all of a sudden they have a problem with it and they go changing the rules on everybody. And that's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Bruce. But this is where our politicians fail us, because you notice that, or at least in my lifetime, that every time a gun thing comes up, all we do at best is hold the line. That's the best we do, is we hold the line. Where is our politicians that are going, get rid of the NFA, or, take something like the Hearing Protection Act and make it a reality? One of the things that frustrates me in the export business here is getting a suppressor shipped overseas. There are countries, Finland's one of them, you can walk into a store there and buy a suppressor. That's it. It's not a controlled item. It's no different than buying a magazine, but to export it over there, oh my God, for us to buy one here, major pain in the ass. Where are we winning on that one? Or our $200 tax stamp if we want an NFA item. In 1934, that was meant to be punitive. It was so only the rich guys could have it. Now, let's be honest, in 2021, the $200 tax is a nuisance. And the frustrating thing about that $200 tax, it's for your background investigation, that is just a glorified NICS check. All you're giving them some fingerprints to go with it. Why on earth is it taking 9 freaking months or longer? I should be able to go into the store where I want to buy an NFA item and go, I want that SBR. Yep, take my $200 tax right now. And in my jurisdiction, if I'm allowed to cash and carry a Title I firearm instantly, I should walk out my SBR instantly, because they're not doing any different check. So our politicians are failing us in that respect. And I think we need to hold them accountable to the fact that we're tired of holding the line. They need to push back now.
I agree. But the issue is that they're not the ones making the call. And they've totally abdicated their authority and their responsibility. They've abdicated. These are bureaucrats, unelected, unknown, faceless bureaucrats who are making decisions for Americans' human rights. Human rights.
Okay? No, you're absolutely right, Doc. You are absolutely right.
Yeah, and absolutely. I mean, that goes back to, I see it all the time with some of these senators. They're like, I'm going to pass this law, and I'll let the courts figure out if it's constitutional or not. Well, I'm sorry, buddy, but you just swore an oath of, to the Constitution when you took that role. So what? You're an open violator to the Constitution because you're going to say, oh, that's someone else's job to figure out? No, dude, it's your job. It's everyone's job.
How is that not a crime? Well, I'm not talking about not getting elected. I'm glad. Look, Trump didn't stand up with the bump stock, and he did not get elected. And man, I was so happy to see his fat ass leave the office. But and it was, for me personally, it was because of the bump stocks and nothing else. Now, I know that's not reality, but in my mind, yeah, that's why he left office in shame. And that's why he's never getting back, because he's
this instead.
Yeah, we got this guy instead, right? And what's he do? He abdicates, and he allows the BATF to slap him around. I mean, he's no leader, and the bureaucrats know this. And you know what? It's not just picking on the president. We can pick on all of Congress.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was saying too, and that's what you were saying. Is these guys, they're not fulfilling their duties, and their duties is to protect the Constitution.
And of course, it should not matter whether you have a machine gun. I don't care. A magazine, 30-round magazine of 5.56 is somewhere in the nature of $12 to $15. I don't care how fast you can empty shoot up $12 to $15. If you want to do it in 3 seconds, do it in 3 seconds. If you want to do it in an afternoon, do it in an afternoon. I don't care. And it's no one's business. And it just doesn't make sense. Look, our computer speeds aren't regulated. Our car speeds, we have speed limits, but our cars can go 240 miles an hour.
Yeah.
We don't limit horsepower. We don't limit, how quick my toaster toasts. It just doesn't make any damn sense. It's a machine. It's made to do one thing: go bang.
Yeah, well, and to your point, I mean, the whole Second Amendment was so that the military capacity of the government resided in the hands of the people. It was so if the Chinese tried to cross the Mexican border and Red Dawn us or whatever, guess what? We have a dispersed military all across the country.
No, that's absolutely right. Second Amendment has as much to do with field artillery, crew-served machine guns, flamethrowers. I mean, it's about my shotgun. It's about my pistol. It's about what I'm going to hand down to my grandparents. No, it's about main battle tanks. It's about, attack helicopters. And I'm not even kidding. That's what the Second Amendment is about. And so machine gun in every home, rocket launcher in every home. I've been to countries where that was the norm. And people were nice. I mean, it wasn't seen as weird.
That's a good point you bring up, Doc, because like in the early 90s, I did a lot of work down in South Africa with an airline I worked for. And my counterpart was a reservist, or commando, as they called it down there. And in South Africa, he's black, and he has an SS-77 machine gun in his house with a basic load of ammo, because he was expected, if he got called out, to be ready, and then he might have to fight his way to what we would call a drill hall. They just called it the base. But yeah, he had that. Is any National Guardsman going to be able to take his weapon home in America? I mean, think about it. Brent, you're still serving. One of your Marines decides to take his M27 home. I got a feeling there's probably some problems there.
Yeah, we can't even let them take their freaking flak and Kevlar home, because a lot of these guys will just get that shit stolen, and you can't trust it to come back, right? So
yeah,
that would never happen. That would never fly.
Yeah. And you go to Switzerland and you'll see reservists on the weekend on the train with their Sturmgewehrs, Sturmgewehr 90s. You'll see them there. Hell, half of them get on the train in full rattle battle, because it's just easier to carry the shit that way.
No, this is ridiculous. And by the way, just for the people saying, he's a Biden, voter. And so what if I am? No, I did not vote for Biden. As a general rule of thumb, I do not elect president. I don't vote for presidents who are obviously suffering from dementia. And I'm not making fun of it. My father died of dementia. So no, the man is sick. He's ill. I didn't like him before he became sick and ill, and I would not have voted for him even if he were healthy. Let me be clear. But I certainly wouldn't have voted for a man who is suffering from a debilitating disease that will eventually kill him, as it did my father. So no, didn't vote for Biden. Wouldn't vote for Trump. And how I vote almost doesn't matter. The more important is, what are our principles? What are our values as a nation? And what are our principles? Where do we stand on human rights? Because going in, just as Bruce has said, going in and saying, well, I don't want you to have lawnmowers that are wider than this. I don't want you to mow your lawn any faster than this. But then we say, okay, well, which part of it do you object to? And they tell you, I don't know, it's emissions. It's fueled emissions. Fine. Then we'll get around that and build faster, better lawnmowers that don't have those fuel emissions. And then what they come out and they say, no. You built a lawnmower that doesn't have the fuel emissions, but I just don't like it. And we don't like it. We don't want it. I mean, how frigging petty, evil, childish do you have to be? And to know that there's no repercussions of these bureaucrats. Oh, my God.
Well, in defense of Uncle Joe, Trump did request the ban of bump stocks and got that approved and got those banned, even though he knew that they were unconstitutional. The ban was unconstitutional, and it took the court system to overturn that. And good old Uncle Joe, to my knowledge, hasn't requested anything firearm related be banned that was banned since he's been in office thus far. So in the context of the conversation that we're having tonight, we'll put a little 1 up beside Trump, and we'll put a little 0 by Uncle Joe for now.
I want to say this, though, if I can just jump there real quick.
Yeah.
maybe he hasn't came out, publicly with anything. Although, let's think about like Russian ammunition bans and stuff like that. I feel like the ATF has been, at least the NFA branch, has been like an extension of the federal government, right? Because look, when Trump went against bump stocks, the ATF was his power arm, right, to get that done. So now we got all this, attacks on these forced reset triggers and other stuff that's come down the pipe. Maybe just because they're not out front and center and camera saying this stuff doesn't mean that there isn't like, some meetings behind closed doors with directors of certain, 3-letter agencies. Hey, you will find a way to ex-nay this. And my understanding is, stabilizing braces are on the radar too. So,
yeah. And I'll say this in reference to the BATF. When is the last time that they laxed a restriction or removed a restriction? When is the last time they gave us something? It's take. It's never a neutral position. It's always take, restrict.
Yeah. So two things. First off, yeah, looking at this, and not to pile on Trump, but this is very much Trump's ATF. I saw it with the bump stock stuff. They were having ATF director after ATF director stand up and say, no, bump stocks are not machine guns. We're not going to take any action at this whatsoever. And Trump's like, well, you don't work for me anymore. Next guy, oh, no, you don't work for me anymore either. Until they found the yes man that would do whatever he wanted. And here we go. I mean, I don't think Biden has messed with the ATF very much. Trump set him up for success as far as that goes, if we're going to, and then like you're saying, what restriction did they roll back? There has been one in my lifetime that I was able to see, and I didn't believe it when I saw it, and that was the AWB sunsetting. I don't know how that happened, but it happened. Thank God.
Well, that was a presidential.
Right.
thing, not so much. I wonder if we had talked to the BATF director at the time, if he was supporting or was against that sunset.
Yeah, I'll tell you this. I mean, but you guys got to remember, Bush was saying, "Bring me the bill, I'll sign it."
He did say that. When was the last time we had a pro-gun president? I'm thinking Teddy Roosevelt, maybe.
Teddy Roosevelt.
That was it. Even Reagan was signed out. The ATF, the NFA had another regulations come out in 1986 under his watch. He was fervently against assault weapons.
Yeah.
When was the last time we had a gun-friendly president?
Yeah, we can thank Reagan for the machine gun ban.
Absolutely.
Ronald Reagan.
Owner Protection Act.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan is the reason that an M16 is $30,000 and not $1,200. That's Ronald Reagan.
Exactly. If you look at the 34, 68, 86, 89, 94, if you look at all these bands, you go to bump stocks and you look at all of these things, you go Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat. Every administration. Don't tell me Republicans are more pro-gun. If Republicans were pro-gun, if they were pro-gun, then we would have laws that say, no, you can't take away their mortars. Trench mortars up to 120 millimeter are perfectly legal. Main battle tanks with a 105 and below main gun, perfectly legal. Attack helicopters firing nothing larger than a 2.75-inch chunker, perfectly legal.
Yeah, it's like I said before. We only hold the line at best. We never advance.
Yeah, and the bad thing with the whole firearm stuff is it actually turned into a stratification, like a caste or a tiered system, where you have the wealthy people that have more and more liberty. Firearms are roped up into the more and more liberty category. And then as you have less financial power, then you have less freedom.
That's absolutely true. And when is the last time that you saw any race-based organization go out and create an argument that these laws are restrictive against poor minorities? You never hear that. They would on anything else, but not when it comes to firearms.
Oh, there is actually a movement out there called Black Guns Matter. it does exist. They're not very popular, obviously, like you pointed out, but they do exist.
Maj Toure.
Well, the other thing is, like, look, if the argument was made against it, I have to be honest. Let me be transparent here and say that if you said, wow, look at all the crime with machine guns, I would say it's just a tool. Look at all the crime with cars. Look at all the crime and the death with fire, gasoline cans. I would say that. But the reality is that there aren't crimes with legally owned machine guns. It just doesn't happen. An MG-34 takes a 3-man crew. You don't see a whole lot of taxi cab drivers robbed with an MG-34. It's ridiculous. I mean, everybody will say, oh no, there was that one time where a police officer committed suicide and I'm like, okay, he committed suicide and suicide's a crime, but he did not commit a violent crime against another person. He was a police officer and he took a legally owned firearm that was a full auto and he shot himself through the head. Do you know, other than that, we don't have crime with full autos? And there are 300,000.
Because there's been, when I looked it up, there's been 3 official crimes committed with legally owned full auto weapons. The interesting fact is 2 of them were owned by police officers, and 2 of the crimes occurred in Ohio. So apparently if we ban police officers in Ohio from machine guns, we're all good.
Yeah, well, my problem with that argument, though, is that just says their measures are working. Here's the thing. I don't care.
That's the other side of the argument.
Yeah, correct. I mean, I don't care if people are killing each other with machine guns or killing each other with semi-automatics or killing each other with single shot or killing each other with knives. Murder is murder, man. Let's address the freaking criminals that are doing this stuff and have our freedom for the people that aren't criminals.
Well, the problems aren't the guns. The problem, because this stuff didn't happen back in the 1940s and 1950s. This is a product of social degradation and moral decay in our society. That's what this problem is.
Well, I mean, so we've heard of swatting. These people get in arguments on social media, in gaming communities and stuff like this. They get angry at each other, so they call the police in, do a false report. This is all speech. I don't hear anybody saying, oh my God, swatting, we shouldn't talk anymore. You shouldn't. You need a license in order to speak, and we should have a registration so we know who's following what religion. Any kind of human expression. We need to control that human right because it's far too dangerous. The pen is mightier than the sword, is it not?
And I think to address what Chad said earlier, there is a degradation of society before, but a lot of these problems are actually there in a slightly different form. School shootings are a 1990s phenomena and forward kind of thing. But in the 1950s, you actually had a problem with bombs in schools. It was a big problem. And in the early 2000s, as my kids were going to school, I started studying this, worried about if something's going to happen to my kids in school. And yeah, in the 1950s, that was a major problem, especially in the northern Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota. It was concentrated there almost, which kind of makes sense. There was a lot of mining going on there in the 1950s, so access to explosives was a thing. But the problem has morphed, but it's always been there. And I imagine 20, 30 years from now, the problem will be slightly different. I think the school shooting thing will go away, but there'll be a violence problem in school in some form in 30 years.
So I think the danger here isn't just bump stocks, which are ingenuity of the American people. I mean, a brilliant ingenuity of American people to create a legal workaround, an illegal law set in 1986, often called the Hughes Amendment, which was shoved in a midnight backdoor drug deal. And so we have worked around this illegal, immoral law that needs to be called out and absolutely done away with. But instead, no. Instead of America has worked around that tyranny to come up with one thing after another, from GAT triggers to bump stocks and really gimmicky crap to the more high quality, as this progression went on, into binary triggers and hard reset triggers and speed 2-gun, 3-gun triggers I mean, there's so many advanced triggers out there right now that all adhere to the letter of the law. And what a bureaucrat is coming and saying, I don't like it. I just don't want it. It's my opinion. And now my opinion is the law of the land, punishable under death. What the?
Yeah, the sad thing is that's true for a lot of areas of our government, not just in the firearms sector. I know guys that do raw milk and stuff like that get slammed all the time by bureaucratic decisions. So it goes back to, like we were talking about before, Congress advocating the responsibility, which is writing laws that people can adhere to and follow. Instead, they're like, I'm going to write some stuff on paper, leave a lot of blank spaces for the agencies, just fill in whatever they want after the fact.
Yeah, that's true. There's a lot of laws that are written on a whole matter of things where it's like at the discretion of this agency. So they're basically telling some government agency, pick one, it doesn't really matter, that you can decide what's the law, essentially. So it's just Congress abdicating their responsibility. I agree. Like, I would love to see Congress come back to a law and sit there and say, no, these triggers, for example, since that's tonight's subject, they're legal. And they're legal because they do this, and you cannot do anything about it, and hem them in. And I think another thing that needs to happen, it won't, but it needs to happen, there needs to be severe penalties when government agencies violate these laws. Think about it. The thing that hasn't happened recently, but there was a rash there where ATF would raid the wrong house. They'd go in, trash the house, kill the dog, do all these things, and oopsie. Now let's transpose that. Imagine being some second lieutenant in Afghanistan and you hit the wrong village. I mean, your best possible outcome there is life in Leavenworth. That's your best possible outcome. Yet ATF can hit the wrong house, kill people and animals, and oopsie, no big deal. Maybe it affects your promotion. Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they got life. I think the couple of incidents you're talking about, they got about 10 years. And there's multiple of them in Iraq and Afghanistan. But you're right. Military personnel getting 10 years. In one case, for a coup de grace. I mean, for literally an act of mercy. Shooting what the medics there said, no, we can't save him. He's in a world of pain. And some lieutenant did the right thing and wound up doing 10 years in Leavenworth for it. So you're absolutely right. And yet our government is not accountable to us. And that is the definition of tyranny, making laws that are for the people but not for the government. This would be a different discussion if the BATF was walking to every single government agency saying, including Department of Defense, saying, dude, you can't have full auto. We passed a law in 1986, semi-auto only. This might be a different discussion. But since they're saying, no, there's laws for us, and there's laws for you. And we will interpret the laws for you any way we see fit. We will enforce them any way we see fit. It does not matter if it costs you life of limb or the life and limb or, the freedom of your loved ones. But this is just absolutely North Korean kind of, oh my God.
The thing, I'm gonna jump in real quick. The thing that pisses me off, and let me just say, I'm all on board with. I think Americans should be able to own damn near any weapon system they desire, and if you, as an individual citizen, get your own nuclear stockpile, well, then maybe the U.S. government can impose some North Korean style, regulations on your ass. But I don't see any reason why I shouldn't be able to own a Carl Gustav launcher. But one of the biggest problems, so it is what it is right now with the laws in place. One of my biggest problems right now is that my understanding is like all these force reset triggers, bump stocks, you name it, stabilizing braces, where they were all approved by the ATF, right? All these companies submitted the stuff. The ATF looked at it and like, look, here's their diagram. This is what they want to do. Here's our definition of what is or isn't a machine gun or a short-barreled rifle. All right, this doesn't meet this definition, so it's approved. And then you let these companies invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in this product. They pump it out. Companies, individual companies, mom and pop stores spend thousands of dollars bringing in this product and selling it. And then just overnight, a new administration comes in or whatever the case may be. And they're like, you know what? No, we're going to change our mind now. We don't like these. These are, even though they don't meet what our definition was of a machine gun, we're going to change our mind. And now these are no longer good. We're going to go seize those, not give you a dime for it. And then Mr. Joe Blow America, who purchased this when it was legal, we're going to come take yours eventually, or you need to turn it in. Otherwise, you're a felon now. That's my biggest problem with it as it is right now.
Mm-hmm. And maybe this is how we push back, because, they never made great leaps to take stuff other than 1934 and 1968. They always took just a little bit at a time. Well, let's take back a little bit at a time. I think a great law would say in all these states where they have these limits, like you can only have 10-round magazines. Okay. All government organizations can only have 10-round magazines. That would change things quickly. Oh, in this state, you're not allowed SBRs? Neither are you, Mr. Enforcement Official. You're only allowed to have what the citizenry is allowed to have. Probably change a whole lot of laws real quickly that way.
Well, I would look at what Missouri's doing, and Texas for that matter as well. They are working their way towards giving more and more freedom back to their citizenry as far as Second Amendment issues goes. So I applaud all those states that are participating in those kinds of reforms. It's unfortunate that they're still in some regards subservient to the federal level. I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but and probably shady reasons for that too. I don't know if you want to get on a tangent, but yeah, I think working at the state level is probably the best course moving forward.
I think I think you're right. Being in Texas and having been in Texas for about 30 years, in the last 20, maybe 25, I have seen great strides in the state in terms of pro-Second Amendment themed laws being corrected and reversed to give us more freedoms. But I think there's a big difference between state restrictions and federal restrictions. And any state that says, well, I'm no longer going to abide by a certain federal restriction, that's not really worth the paper that it's written on, because it doesn't really matter to you whether it's a state police that kicks your door in or federal police that kicks your door in. Your door still gets kicked in. I guess what I'm saying is I've seen other states that said, we're not going to recognize federal machine gun laws. We're not going to recognize federal suppressor laws or whatever. Well, that's great, because you're not going to do any state jail time, but that's not going to keep you out of the pen. And I think that that's what we really need to address. It's something that we lost as states back during the Civil War when states' rights were diminished. I would like to see those expanded and corrected, but I think that's a very big, very uphill fight, because those that have the power now in the federal system, they don't want to give it up.
Right, Bruce, but I'll say this. What Mike is saying here is that we have more leverage, and we need a big dog. We need a big dog in this fight. And the state can be that big dog for us, because Joe Schmo is never going to get, John Q. Citizen is never going to get the federal government to turn. So what you do is you get a state like Missouri, which has been looking at how to nullify federal firearm laws, which are in theory only apply with interstate commerce. So if a firearm X, is manufactured inside Missouri and sold inside Missouri and owned and possessed and never, ever leaves the border of Missouri, how does federal firearm laws, which are for interstate commerce, how does it have any jurisdiction whatsoever? So you need not only that, but then you need sheriffs and state troopers that will arrest and will let the federal government know, do it. Here it is. Here's John Q. Citizen. I got him right here. Here's his house. Come get him. All right, come get him. Now you're all under arrest. You're going, we'll have trial in our state. You're not going out. You're not getting, extradited. You're not, nope. This is a Missouri offense. You're staying in Missouri penitentiaries. You're doing the 5 years. You did the crime. You're doing the time here in Missouri. Now, when you
Well-
start having that happen, and it starts happening instead of one state, but 12 states, now you have leverage.
That sounds great. I agree with you, except for the interstate commerce issue. The interstate commerce issue is even much worse than you just described. This all started, I don't know, probably 50, 60 years ago. There was a farmer selling crops from his farm, and they weren't leaving the state. They were being consumed right there. And the feds came in, kicked his door in, drug him off to court. And the distinction was made that if in theory those crops could be transported across state lines, even though not so much as a squash ever was, that's regulated by interstate commerce. And from that precedent forward, interstate commerce is everything. It's anything, because there's nothing you're doing that couldn't possibly and theoretically be moved across state lines. Those suppressors that are built right there in the center of Missouri, well, could one theoretically be driven across state lines? Well, sure. So even if every owner there was keeping them inside state lines, they're still regulated by interstate commerce. Now, it's bullshit, but it's how everything gets regulated by interstate commerce.
And
that's the problem.
That's my point, Bruce. This is where we are in America today. I'm agreeing with you. And this is, I didn't know that case study, but that's just horrific. But this is the point. When bureaucrats pass law, pass judgment, pass punishment, when bureaucrats do this, then anytime that federal bureaucracy decides that what you're doing to your wife is rape, or at least has the potential to be rape, then you'll be arrested and thrown in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as the more the government gets removed from the people, the more it's ripe for abuse. So that's why it's always better, government works better when it's closest to people, local level, state level. Once you start getting past state level, it starts getting really shady as far as who are they really representing.
Yeah, I'm seeing some hate for cops. You know what? We need to be more nuanced than that, because here's the point. I'm looking for these cops that are this evil. Oh man, they're all bootlickers and they're ready to arrest them. And every single cop I know, and I know more than I can count, I'm going to say several dozen, never found them that way. I found them quite the opposite. They're very pro-gun. They're very pro-liberty. They're very, much in favor of working with and supporting the citizen. Now hold on. I will admit that there are cops at the federal level. Agent Bezit? You know what we're talking about, that YouTube channel that does that? I mean, it's parody, but it's not. If you're dealing with federal cops that deal with the American public, yeah, they're Agent Bezits. Okay, I get that. But that said, if you're looking at, and I say I've known all these cops, wait, I've known two. I've known two cops that were the holy terrors that you think they were, that I hear about. And you know where they were from? They were from a communist state. So their state said, we are good communists. And one thing we do is we purge the citizens with violent force. And that's what I need you to do. And these cops said, yes, comrade. And they went forth. And that's what they do. And it was funny because I met these two cops in Phoenix, Arizona, right? They were in Arizona from their communist state. They had come in there looking for a job in Arizona. And I had a common friend. And they went to their job interview, picked up, got on their flight, flew back to their communist state, and did not take the job. Want to know why? Because when they started talking about armed citizen, apparently this came up in the interview in Phoenix. And, the Arizona, state troopers are like, everybody's armed here. And you just got to get used to it. You just got to learn to love it, brother, because this is America. Ooh, freedom. I mean, we grab beer at the local store and you go right in there, gas station, and look around. Everybody's armed. Everybody's got it strapped on. If that makes you uncomfortable, don't come to Arizona. And these two guys got on and were like, That would never happen in my communist state. And they got back and they went to their beloved communist state and did not take jobs in Phoenix, Arizona.
I want to say that Bill, Chad, and I can attest that we've known, especially in the reserves, many servicemen, veterans that are police officers. So I am not on board with the anti-police hate that I'm seeing in the comment section. And if you guys, who's dealing with the criminals? Are you? Those of you that I saw one guy talking about it, oh, I grew up in the hood and cops pointed guns in my face. Who's dealing with the goddamn criminals? I guarantee it's not you, bud. So
what'd you do?
I'm not anti-police. I'm not anti-police. I'll even go one step further. Both Chad and I know a guy that we served in Afghanistan with that's an ATF agent. He's a freaking ATF agent. Now he doesn't.
And I would take a bullet for that. I'd take a bullet for him to this day.
100%. Now here's the thing: he don't work for the NFA branch, but he's out there putting some pretty nasty freaking cartel members in San Francisco and other cities in jail. I mean, so I'm not anti-police, guys. If you got that idea, then feel free to leave. I ask no money or anything from anybody. My YouTube videos are free, so you can go pound sand. I'm not anti-police, but here's the thing: I believe in freedom. Right? I believe in individual Americans having the right to own 81 millimeter mortars and Carl Gustav launchers and 155 millimeter howitzers and anything else. And I'm not of the belief that officers should be restricted to 10-round magazines, nor should I believe civilians should be restricted to 10-round magazines. For the exact same reason I want an officer to have a 30-round magazine is the same reason I want a civilian to have a 30-round magazine, because it's more effective. So that's my take on it, guys.
Yeah, and I should be clear, the one time ever, I met a couple of ATF agents, and they were raiding my basement at the time. They were so polite. They were nice. They're really like professional guys. It was like, okay, one shepherd raises a lot of eyebrows. But anyway, yeah, they were super nice and professional.
Did we solve world hunger?
No, we may.
I don't know. Maybe we need to segue into Canadian truckers.
Oh, I'm ready for that one.
It has been an hour.
Beat this down to pulp here. So, all right, guys. Moving on, and I'm going to default to somebody else on this because I'm not 100% spun up on this. But apparently, there's a big protest with Canadian truckers. Obviously, in Canada, they're a little bit more draconian than some of the states here in the United States in COVID restrictions. So apparently the Canadians or at least some of them are waking up and starting to fight back in a nonviolent fashion. So somebody pick it up.
Well, I'll run with this one because this is in my industry and it's tradition that I always jump on the grenade. I think this trucking protest is freaking awesome. I mean, they're reporting a line of trucks 50 miles long. And the greatest thing they reported this weekend at Ottawa, with the streets clogged with trucks honking, making all this noise, there were exactly a goose egg of arrests or violent incidents reported. Apparently, the most serious, sinister thing these truckers did was go get some food at the local food bank, taking it away from the poor homeless people.
No, correction. They did break into multiple fights that then happened to form into hockey. So they were doing hockey in the open streets. Did you see this? And you can't have a hockey game until first you have a fist fight. So that preceded it. And then they decided.
Well, see, that doesn't constitute a crime because that's just picking sides.
That's right. That's how you choose your team.
That's not a crime. So,
right. Fair point.
It's amazing. Now let's contrast that to the summer of 2020. Okay, point made. The coolest thing about the Canadian truckers, I see that comment there. If it's debunked, great. That's even better for the story. I've always advocated something like this for years. My whole thing was always about park the truck. Pick a day, pick a time. Every truck, everywhere, parks. If it's in the middle of the beltway, it parks. It's in the middle of an intersection, it parks. It's 3 feet away from the loading dock, it parks. It would take literally an hour to bring the country to a standstill and get their point across. look at this. These trucks showed up in Ottawa. Trudeau had to run away, supposedly because he has COVID, but working remotely. Yeah, right. Amazing coincidence. The Canadians are onto something here, and the Europeans are starting to pick up on it. We here in America need to pick up on this as well. The problem you have in America that you don't have in Canada, though, is a lot of your big trucking companies you see out there, your XPOs, your ABFs, and your FedExes and all that, are all unionized. Who do unions support? So there's your problem. This has been tried in America a couple of years ago. They tried to do it around the Beltway here by clogging the Beltway and going 20 miles an hour. And they got forced off into one lane. Now, that caused a lot of chaos, but it was all the owner-operator independent truckers. One guy, one truck, that's his business. So it really didn't have the big impact. And also, I think social media has advanced even in 2 years to the point that you notice we know about this Canadian truckers thing, but we don't know about it from watching the news. We know about it because we're getting our news on the internet, and there's all these different sources putting it out there. But I think this is a great protest. This will go a long way towards noon, because as long as those trucks are in that rally, a 50-mile long truck, that's tens of thousands of trucks. The businesses are not being restocked. The supermarkets are not being restocked. Walmart's not being restocked. Supplies are not getting to where they're going. Canada has the same trucking crisis we have here in America. There's a massive shortage of drivers to start with. This is only exacerbating a problem, and these guys have real power now, and there's not much the government can do about it.
Yeah, they're
go ahead.
They're going to start one here too, from California to Washington D.C. So
awesome.
We're about to see that here as well. I think the most terrifying part of this whole ordeal was Trudeau's response, and I'm sure I don't know if Brent, you're going to share what I'm sharing with everybody else right now, but I've got a flag that says "fuck Trudeau." Yep, there you go, right there.
Yes.
I'm thinking about purchasing one of those and hanging it up on my wall because that Bolshevik piece of shit has gone too far. Anyway, I think his response has been the most, predictable yet terrifying part of this whole ordeal. And what it comes down to is, what is misinformation? Well, according to Christopher Paul, misinformation is having the wrong facts and having the wrong explanations. Well, if they're wrong, they're not facts. So labeling something misinformation, I mean, we've gone through this with the left, up and down, left and right, and it's coming to a boil with linguistic engineering. And protesters are labeling the right anti-science, anti-vax. Well, I don't know about them, but we're the ones that are promoting natural immunity. They haven't said anything about natural immunity at all. So what I've done today is I've went and I borrowed somebody's biology textbook, basic biology textbook. And I've read in here several times that active immunity develops naturally in response to an infection. So why are we not talking about this? That's my question. Why do we have to wait this long? We've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have had the virus naturally. They have the natural immunity, and we're not talking about it. Why?
Honestly, I can answer that, Jack. You brought it up, and I know a little lesson in etymology. So there's misinformation, which is having the wrong facts, and there's disinformation, which is an intent to deceive with the wrong facts. There's a real difference between misinformation and disinformation. And I think what we're seeing is a campaign of disinformation. Pay attention to this. Don't look over here. No, don't do that. Just pay attention to this. And that's disinformation. I was very, very forgiving of this for the first 6 months, in spite of the fact that 2 weeks to flatten the curve, yeah, okay. And 2 weeks turned into 6 months. But at the 6 month mark, about September of 2020, it's now 2022. In September of 2020, we had enough data now, data sets, large sets of data to tell all sorts of things. And what started from that point on was a campaign of disinformation because it had been monetized, because it had been politicized.
My favorite part of this whole narrative was, no, guys, the masks don't work. then yeah, everyone mask up. Yeah, we were lying to you before. So when were you lying to me? Were you lying to me before, or are you lying to me now? Are you lying on other stuff?
Let's be honest with this whole mask thing. With the exception of Bruce, we're all military men. Do we all remember our NBC training? Yeah, right there. That tells you that fucking little piece of paper with 2 strings doesn't fucking do shit. You know?
Yeah, I was thinking about that today, Les. I was thinking about exactly what you guys are talking about. I was at the Ace Hardware, and this is what I think about when I'm at Ace Hardware. But, you know, we were initially told that the only masks that work are N95 or better masks. Then everybody went and bought the N95 mask, and nobody could get them, including medical personnel. And there was a huge shortage, and they were doing all kinds of crazy stuff, washing masks and putting them through UV light and all this craziness. Then the government comes out and they go, any mask will work. You don't need an N95. Anything will work. And there were all these videos of how to make one out of a t-shirt and a bra and all kinds of weird stuff, right? People were out there making masks. Well, now all of a sudden we're starting to hear, as obviously the science and data is being leaked out, that none of those masks work. It does take an N95 or better to do anything. Now I want you to, but here's the thing. You still have people today that believe in what they were told by the government to the point that they feel that those cloth masks are actually still doing something. And I thought about this from a military context. Could you imagine if you guys were sent off to war and you were being threatened with some type of chemical or biological warfare, and the generals come down to the lieutenants, and the lieutenants come down to you little men, and the lieutenants go, listen, we don't have enough of those really cool gas masks to give all you guys, but we got these cloth ones. And if you'll just make one out of one of your t-shirts, you're going to be fine. You're going to be okay, right? You're going to be good, Doc. You're completely protected there. You're absolutely fine. There's no chemical, no biological problems. You're safe. And you guys go through war like that for like a year, right? And then all of a sudden the government comes out and goes, all right. We were lying like that. That's not true. But you still have lieutenants that believe it's giving you protection. That's what's going on right now. I mean, you literally have people, these, I guess they call them maskers. I see them all the time, and they've got masks on, and I'm just looking at them and I'm like, you know, I think to myself, as long as you feel better, that's cool. But that's not doing anything, right? That's not doing anything. And Brent, I want to know, is that mask, is that a new mask or is that a hand-me-down?
It's definitely used.
Well, you know, to your point there, Bruce, I'll give you 2 examples. One, for all of us who've been desert ops and we put our do-rag on because we've been in a vehicle and the dust clouds are coming up. How well did that work? I mean, it beat the shit out of nothing, but, you know, that's against dust particles, which are tens of thousands of times larger than an Omicron particle. So how is this piece of cloth going to work? And second to what you're saying, Bruce, late January 1991 at our base, in comes a Scud, and it gets hit with the Patriot and lands about a mile away from our base. Okay, we knew Saddam's Scuds at the time, even if they had a chemical warhead, could not carry much gas. A mile away, we should have been safe. Yet out of the abundance of cautions, the all clear siren never went off. 12 hours later, still in MOP 4, and then you start making that decision. Like, getting a rumble back there. And then you remember your training about how you take a dump in your MOP gear and all the decon procedures. Or do you just say, yeah, I don't want to get gas, so I'll just crap my pants. You know, that's what fear goes. And you know, 99% chance that nothing's going to happen based on the parameters of what you know of the enemy's weapon. Now, you take an unknown disease, you have the media ramp it up to all kinds of proportion where anytime you turn on the news and TV, no matter what subject they're covering, down in the corner of your screen's a little box telling you how many people just croaked from this disease. You know, fear was ramped to 1,000. And then you're called a heretic when you start asking incredibly basic questions like, I'm down at my local gas station / Minute Mart, and this disease is so deadly, I can't have my soft serve ice cream. I can't have my fountain soda. but apparently coffee's okay. Or you start asking the question, I'm at my local restaurant, but I'm safe until 8 p.m. But after 8 p.m., it's got to close because COVID is so dangerous after 8 p.m. Or the businesses that are open on Tuesday because of COVID, but they're closed Wednesday. Why is Wednesday the deadly day? You know, just little things like this. We all saw this, and it got to the point that there was no logic being applied. But still, you got to wear your piece of paper on your face.
The stupid thing is we have a case study. Like, we literally have case studies in the United States. You have multiple states. Some of them don't have any of this COVID crap, right? Florida, Texas, and there's others that aren't doing this. My kids go to school. They do not have to wear a mask or any of that crap. And I'm watching on the news these Virginia parents, these left-wing Virginia parents that are like freaking out because their kids got to go to school and there's going to be other kids there without masks on. Oh, my God. Moron. We've been doing that in Texas and Florida for over a year. Like, you're an idiot.
Yeah, when it comes to, like you said, case study, I mean, we've had a great social experiment over these last couple of years. I've told you guys before, a honeymoon in Florida, it literally was like Florida hadn't heard of COVID. It was literally like I flew to an island that had been untouched by the news, the media, and COVID. There were no masks to be seen. There just was none of that. I mean, it was night and day different. And I'm going to tell you what, and here's the kicker. The death rate in Florida is no worse than anywhere else and is better than a lot of other places like California and New York, where they're doing nothing. They're wearing triple masks. They've got masks on their freaking cats, man. It's crazy up there, right? So what's the case study? The case study is that if you don't have any restrictions, your death rate isn't going to be any worse than if you've got massive restrictions. So then the question becomes, why are we doing anything at all?
Yeah, I mean,
that's how you know it's been politicized. You know, again, I'm harping on what they're going at. Never let a good crisis go to waste, as Rahm Emanuel said, and that's what's going on here is a giant power grab. But I still want to go back to attacking our language. Now, anti-vax is anybody that is pro-vaccine but against the vaccine mandate. So they've changed the definition of what anti-vax is. And stuff like this, I find it very, very terrifying. So,
yeah, what's crazy is they say anti-vax, and I know plenty of people that aren't anti-vax for the ones that work. It's just these unproven ones that actually have been proven that they don't really do much, that they're against. And now these guys are labeled a certain way because they are discerning as to what they decide to use for their body.
Yeah, I know. This is going to be a big name, but Joe Rogan was talking about it, and one of the things he said, and I think he kind of summed it up, was that it was like that like scarlet letter on your shirt, right? Like those people that had COVID before the vaccine was available, or even during the vaccine up until about 6 months ago, I guess, until the Z virus, right? That if you got COVID, people looked down on you somehow, like you were dirty or you had done something wrong, or you must not have been wearing your mask, or whatever the case may be. But now with this new variant out and everybody's getting it, even those that are vaxxed, that's kind of had to quickly change, hasn't it? I think that was a neat little point that he made about the whole thing.
Even the Prime Minister of Canada now has COVID.
No, say this.
Yeah. And funny, they feel sorry for him, but when Trump had COVID, everybody, I think there was a whole lot of people that were very upset it didn't have more terminal effects on Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say this.
Amazing how that works. Compassion is so selective.
To your question real quick, Chad, because I wanted to answer this for you, because I know you asked, like, why are we not talking about natural immunity?
Natural immunity.
Okay, well, you're absolutely right, and the studies on it are fantastic. The studies look really good. I'm gonna tell you why no one's talking about it, and I've noticed this. Even if like CNN and MSNBC, if somebody mentions it, they minimize it and they try to move on immediately. And here's why: because there's no traceability on that. You can't track that. The vast majority of people who have had one variant of COVID or another, I've had it twice. The vast majority of them, there's no documentation of it. There's no documentations when I had it. The first time I had 0 symptoms, zero. I had no idea that I had it. The second time that I had it, it was extremely mild, nothing more than like an allergy, runny nose, and a cough from time to time. That was it, a little 3-day event. But I didn't go to the doctor over that or anything. I wouldn't have known I had it if I didn't self-test at home. There's millions of people just like me that either knew they had it but didn't test, but the test wasn't documented. And here's the problem. It's control. It's control. How can the government control you if they don't know that you've had it? That's the answer. That's why they're not talking about it. They can't control that.
Oh, absolutely. And that ties into guns, because think about it, in guns, it's always about control, not guns, because you can defeat any gun control argument with the following statement. I'll give you any background and waiting period that you want. I can have whatever I want. That destroys their argument. They'll back down on that every time.
Hey, so this is my personal story about the COVID stuff, and truth be told, I don't know if I had COVID or not. I came down with a really bad upper respiratory bronchitis in December of 2019, and I had it for about 10 days. And I went and saw my doctor, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's a bad thing going around, blah blah blah," and they just treated it like normal, right? And this was, you know, in hindsight, it was already breaking out in China, all this stuff, but it wasn't making the news here in the States. Okay, fast forward to, you know, the Delta variant and all that stuff. I was working shoulder to shoulder with guys throughout the entirety of the pandemic at a factory of over 500 people. And there was guys dropping out right and left with COVID, guys that I was working shoulder to shoulder with on machines, on projects, at desks and offices, all the above. I never got sick. So I don't know what that means, but that's just was my experience.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I mean, we're hitting the head. I think we're hitting the nail on the head here, and that is, look, we have a real disease, or we had one anyway. And it did have, you know, it was fatal for a certain demographic, and that's what I'm saying. 6 months into this, you know, 9 months into this, we had some pretty good data to realize what we're up against. But at that point, it had been incentivized monetarily, and it had been politicized in the next, you know, big election, national election. And so they weren't about to give up that power, and they still haven't. You know, we've been saying it's about power. It's about power. How do you keep people under your thumb? Well, you have to keep them afraid. You have to keep fear going. Fear must become the virtue. And so fear has become a virtue. People are proud that they are afraid here in the DC area where I live. They're just fiercely proud of it. And if you're not as afraid of them, why, you're just not as good of a person as they are. There's this wonderful quote by a animation called The Tale of Despero, 2008. If your kids have seen it, great. And it's about a mouse that doesn't know to be afraid. And he doesn't fit in with the other mice because they're afraid of everything. They go to school to learn to be afraid, you know, and the teacher shows them like a butcher knife and all the kids scream and they hide underneath their desk. But this mouse goes, wow, that's really nice. Where can I get one? You know? And he's just this brave mouse. And after they realize that they have failed to teach him to be afraid, after they realize that he does not see fear as a virtue, but sees bravery as a virtue, the principal of the school comes and says to him, I'll try to get the quote right, "Oh, Despero, there's so many wonderful things in this life to be afraid of if you'll only try."
Hear, hear.
Yeah. And look at what it's doing to our society. I know I'm falling susceptible to it. You know, we're splitting. We're becoming very polarized over this issue. You know, there's the people that are getting on like, you know, I won't put a mask on for anything, and they'll flagrantly defy it. SHOT Show was a great example like that. The 4 days of SHOT Show, the mask police were there. The first day they were rather enforcing it with great gusto, threatening to throw you out. By the fourth day, they like, you need to put your mask on. People would literally go, okay. And as soon as the guy turned his back, they wouldn't even bother to put the loops around their ears. I mean, they just gave up, you know. But that's you know, if you go into SHOT Show, you're a pretty libertarian-minded person. But there's other groups that, will double, triple mask. I was in a store today getting lunch, and literally the person in front of me, when he put his order down on the counter, before he did, he took out a alcohol wipe and wiped the counter with his, N95,000 mask on and stuff, and his face shield and all that. And it's like, come on, dude.
He's probably in his early 20s too, huh?
Probably middle-aged like me, but still, fear goes too far.
How is he going to eat in an N95 mask?
Hey, how do stormtroopers drink, Don't ask questions.
I'm going to tell you, Les, to your point where you kind of carved out that most of those were libertarian thinkers. I just worked an event of 99.9% females, about 2,000 to 3,000 of them in a room together. And the host of the event also had sort of a mask mandate, right? I'm going to tell you that we looked around and we figure about 1 in 50 were wearing the mask, and they were sitting side by side, 2,000 to 3,000 of them in a room. These were not libertarian thinkers. These were not conservative moms. This was just a sampling of women from any political background, any color across the country had come to this one area to sit side by side and watch this one presentation. I tell you that people as a whole, it may be the silent majority, but they're really done with the whole mask thing, man. I have no doubt about it. They were just, when it was one, women who we know are all a bunch of safety hens, and then 2, no political background across the country, 1 in 50 wearing a mask. Yeah, that we're kind of done with that.
Yeah,
we are, but our government's not. We are, but our government's not, and that's the thing that's kind of been brought up here. I'm kind of surprised. We got Canada's probably going to eventually go the way of the EU before we do. But we're going to be the last ones. Maybe Australia will be the last ones. Who knows? They're in lockdown mode down there like crazy. But what's it going to take for us to follow their lead? That's my question.
To be fair, America has been one of the most, as a whole nation as a whole, I don't mean in regions, but as a nation as a whole, we've been one of the most relaxed about, travel and all of this. Okay, obviously, not every place. The metropolitan centers, and particularly on the East and West Coast, have been hysterical. But as a whole, as a nation, we've been more relaxed than the vast majority. Now, that said, what we've seen is that in the most draconian crackdowns in Europe, including the UK, if you remember back, not that long ago, there were, France and Belgium and UK and Spain and, Hungary, and they had uprisings that looked very much like the Canadian uprising, although the Canadian is much more peaceful, that's fantastic. But the point is that they've had their uprisings, and now the UK is ready to dump the whole entire thing. They're like, we're done with this.
Yeah, they are. Denmark is. Finland's done. They're done. It's over with.
Right. And I think it's time that Trudeau, but this is good for us. This is good that the communists are being called out on their BS.
What were the Russians like restrictions? Like, what were they doing during COVID and stuff? Do they wear masks? I'm just curious. I don't know.
I tell you, Brent,
vodka kills everything. They're good. Vodka took care of it.
They were motorboarding.
Brent, can I get the mask from her that the guy was wearing? I just asked him.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn, man.
I had to find an excuse to get that picture into the stream.
Well, I want to
She's from Canada.
It says, "Can you guys bring freedom to Canada? We need a good old liberation." Look, the truckers started it. Back them up.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's right to quote Stuart Scheller, who said, "But we all can't be wrong." The more you get numbers behind it, the harder it will be for them to resist. And then sooner or later, one of the politicians will crack. And once one cracks, other will. When one of them sees his political fortunes tied to those truckers, he'll back them hard. And when one does it and survives, a second one will. What those truckers need to do now is leave those trucks parked. Don't move them. Block the roads. Leave a 50-mile log jam. Let the store shelves go empty. Let the supermarkets not be able to provide. Sooner or later, people will demand an end to this.
Yeah.
The truckers just have to stand firm. It's like, no mandate, no movement.
Have you seen Parliament, the Canadian Parliament today? Good grief. And yesterday, like, watch clips. You can go on YouTube and look at them. Watch clips. They are being un-Canadian-like in their feistiness. I mean, it's, and you hear good side, I think there's a good showing from all the way around. Being an American looking at it, the liberal parties are, admitting, yeah, there's something deeply, fundamentally wrong about this. They're admitting that, but they're saying, look, can we stand with us conservatives, and we'll tell everybody to go home and we'll solve this. And the conservatives are saying that's not what the people outside want. Our constituents want us to solve it now, under pressure. That's why they're here. It's like I said, there were some feisty exchanges, nothing like the British, which are really pointed exchanges, and nothing nearly as entertaining as the Koreans, who like to throw shoes at each other and get in fistfights. That's the best parliament to watch. It's like hockey. But every South Korean goes, oh my God, I voted for him. But no, I'm saying you're absolutely right, Les. There doesn't need to be a violent solution here. There needs to be a stiff resolve, and Canadians are showing the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Leave those trucks parked. When the supermarket's bare and people are getting hungry, nobody's going to give a damn about a mask. They're going to want that truck to roll and fill that thing back up, and they're going to let their politicians know mandate's done.
You want to get
the same thing needs to happen here in America. Absolutely. It
right.
needs to happen here in every freaking state capital.
If you want to
even
get
in the state capitals like Florida and Tallahassee, where it's super pro good, just remind them.
Well,
needs to happen everywhere.
That's actually one of the beauties with the United States is we have the states where there's a little bit of pick and choose. If you don't like how it is in New York, maybe you can move down to Florida and get a taste of that.
And they are.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Just don't bring your politics with you.
We're seeing it here in Texas.
Yeah, that's the thing. And New York's a great example. They are the worst about bringing their politics with them. Because, Doc, I know you've seen this in Alexandria. A New Yorker, because they'll tell you the pizza in New York's so much better. Everything in New York is better. And you really want to piss them off, then go, why did you leave? Oh, yeah, that will almost start a fist fight. But New York is better.
California is no different. You see California plates all over the road with Biden-Harris stickers on the back, Bernie stickers on the back. It's like you left the shithole and now you're going to try to make our state one. Like that's not how it works, people.
Yeah, that's the shame of it, right? I mean, but that's moving for economic reasons, maybe, but not understanding causation. So
the causation of their high taxes,
right?
Oh, you're getting me all worked up, Bruce. Please.
Go, Brent, go.
I'm gonna have to pull the Yushenka out again, man.
I'll say this: if you're in terms of truckers and bringing it to the U.S., Les, I know that we all do, but I don't think people in this country understand that every single thing they get came on a truck. Everything in the grocery store, everything that they buy, a truck brought. And I tell you what, you want to get the country's attention, you shut down Amazon for about 2 weeks and you watch laws and things start changing. That's all it would take. I know my wife is literally in the background going, no, not my Amazon. That's every woman in the country nearly, right? I mean, you want to hit them where it hurts. You shut down deliveries to your front door for a couple of weeks. That's all it would take is these truckers just to say, you know what? We're all going to take this week off and pick a week. It would bring the country to a standstill. We're talking about massive massive problems. And no different than in Canada. If they all just took a week off, like you said, park those trucks for a week, it'll turn the country upside down. I guarantee you.
Oh yeah, that's being the polite version. Just park your truck in a nice place and go take a vacation. You know, my idea would take place in a day. Just say noon, wherever you're at, stop. Just the chaos that would cause right there. They would get demands met quickly for no other reason than to get the roads moving.
And to be fair, this doesn't have to all be on the truckers' shoulders. I know they're the guys leading the charge, but honestly, if every citizen just says, "No, I'm not showing up,"
no, support them, because here's one of the after effects of the trucks that you wouldn't expect. Those trucks don't roll, planes don't fly. Those trucks stop for the day, the planes don't fly the next day.
Nothing happens if trucks aren't rolling. I'll just say again, I don't think people realize what a service truckers bring to our country. If the trucks aren't rolling, guys, you're not getting jack. And it's much more profound than you think. It's not just those Amazon packages. It's fuel deliveries. It's water deliveries. It's everything. Everything depends on routine truck deliveries.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think they should do it here in the States. I hate it. It's gonna
hurt us all, but when they do it, we need to support it.
Right. We need to suffer to lift this shit, because it's gone on for 2 years now. Plus. Enough's enough.
C Flat is correct. He says just park your truck and go to One Shepherd. He's absolutely correct.
Well, I think we're reaching culmination on this topic, guys.
Yeah, I think we're all pretty much in agreement. There's not a lot of dissent going on here.
Once again, we've solved another one of the world's problems.
We got to give it to the Canadians on this one, actually. I think they're the ones who are solving this and showing us the way. And again, I don't want to take away from the other valiant demonstrations throughout Europe, and God bless the Australians. I never would have guessed that Australia would be the next to have concentration camps and putting people on trains, the oppression of their people. I hope that we all of us, but particularly the Australians, I hope they come out of this mess and say, okay, it's time to figuratively hunt heads. We need to change. We need a fundamental change in Australia. We're going back to our cowboy ways. We're going back to liberty, individual human rights. I hope they do that.
They need their guns back.
Yeah, exactly. If you follow the disarmament narrative, they're lockstep with it. So
yep.
Don't let your guns get taken, and that doesn't happen to you.
It's so strange, man. Every time I follow a few Canadian or a few Australians on YouTube, and anytime I see an Australian on YouTube, I'm like, these are some white trash rednecks, And I say that being one myself, and I can't fathom what's going on over there, because white trash rednecks would never allow this to happen. So they must be, there's something special about Australians, and I'm not saying that in a complimentary kind of way.
Maybe it's because they never threw off the crown,
Well, there's a thing. I went on a great tour in Australia one time, and they said if you're an Australian, you came from one of three things. You were a missionary, you were a criminal, or you were a soldier. That was the only three reasons you end up in Australia. And I think it develops a unique thing. But Australia has always had this oppression. In the 1970s, they were clearing a district of houses or of slums to make way for big housing and everything. They just did it in a day. The people living in those slums had no idea when they got up that morning that they wouldn't have a home at the end of the day. And the Australians just rolled in with things and demolished a whole neighborhood and turned it into an upper scale neighborhood. When the Sydney Harbor Bridge was built in the 1930s, same thing. The government said, we're building a bridge here, and they start knocking houses down and throwing people out of their homes. The only thing that stopped it, and this is a funny story, but a true story, is when they went to knock down the pub. Well, then the people got upset about that. And there's a pub there that they literally moved across the street brick by brick so they could finish building the bridge. Houses can be destroyed. You can have to go move in with your neighbor. Don't fuck with the pub. But my point is, in Australia, this is not the first time this has happened. There are plenty of examples throughout their history. About every 20, 30 years, they have something like this happen, and they seem to tolerate it.
Well, and the bad thing is, even America has some, skeletons in the closet, like with the Japanese during World War II, etc., or Japanese American citizens, I should say, during World War II. So it's hard to extrapolate that large scale. And if you look at like how the corporations use eminent domain and stuff like that to displace people today, it's similar in that regard. Maybe the process may be a little bit longer, but the end result's the same. So unfortunately, that's just a reality of large governments.
All right, guys. Well, let's go around the horn for final thoughts, and then let's wrap this up. So let's go clockwise. So Les, you got it. Then Chad, then Bruce, Doc, and Mike.
All right, just to recap what we've talked about tonight, the ATF is planning to do something with forced reset, wide open triggers. What it is, I don't think we know yet. We've seen a leaked internal memo, but if you think about it, we really don't know much more than that. As far as what's going on up in Canada, go Canada. This is awesome. American truckers, you need to do what the Canadians are doing. The fact that it's being repressed so much in the mainstream media just shows how scared the government is, because if they weren't afraid of this, they wouldn't care about the coverage. And in America, the same thing needs to happen. And it needs to be well thought out, well coordinated, but it doesn't have to be a single leader to do it. Just a guy in his truck can start it. And just one guy in a truck gets a second guy in a truck. You keep that convoy moving. It's kind of like the old song we grew up with. Mercy sakes alive, we have a convoy. This needs to happen here. And when it does, COVID's over. You're muted, Chad.
All right. Can you hear me?
Lima Charlie.
All right. It's going to be hard to segue that. Those are pretty much my thoughts exactly. It does need to happen here, and I think it is happening here. Watching the news, they're planning one of those marches from California, like I said, to Washington, D.C. down here. I don't know when it's going to take place, but it is on the verge. I just want to go back to some of the points I made earlier about this hijacking of our language, changing definitions of words. For example, anti-vax. Trudeau called this thing racist. This whole march was racist, even though he doesn't offer any evidence as to why it's racist. All of a sudden, it is racist. I think maybe there have been a few Confederate flags flying up in Canada. Not sure why, but that's an individual thing. That's not, the whole group thing. So just be mindful of what's going on with our language, and we need to take some of these words back. As far as the ATF goes, it's never a good thing when you have bureaucrats deciding what is a machine gun, what is a silencer, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully, as I pointed out, we got some up and comings in the House and the Senate that will kind of steer things in a better direction, and hopefully we have a red wave within the next year that some of the stuff can get hashed out.
Yeah, Chad, good points. I'm as hopeful as you are. A good red wave would help with this, alleviate some of this aggression against us. I believe not that Republicans are out there giving us or protecting any of our rights or expanding any rights, but at least it does seem to stop. A good red wave seems to stop the momentum that Democrats have on restricting our freedoms, particularly in the gun world. Same thing is true with the BATF. Whenever they seem like they have an administration support, they're all of a sudden aggressive, and they're out there creating all kind of new definitions and new rules and reinterpreting laws and things that they had written in the past. And when you have a good, strong Republican president, House, and Senate, those things seem to kind of slow with the BATF. So there's clearly a connection there. And the BATF is clearly politically motivated in that respect. I'm just kind of guess we're in a holding pattern on that. Let's see what they do over the next couple weeks, months in terms of these trigger assemblies and maybe the pistol braces as well. Something we didn't talk about, but I think there's a new possible definition of what receivers are in terms of the 80% stuff that's out there. We'll see. Until the ball's really in their court. Until we make a move, we don't know exactly what they're going to do. In terms of truckers and mask mandates and all of that stuff, look, I think that in terms of the U.S., I support Canada on what they're doing. They're their own country, and maybe they're giving us some ideas, some things we can do here. But I believe in America, based on what I'm seeing, people have been lied to by the government for too long. And these are people that weren't anti-government or didn't know anything about the history of the government. But when the government tells you not to believe your lying eyes, you have to start questioning that. And when you're told things like, get the vaccine and you'll never get the virus, and then all of a sudden that's simply factually inaccurate. You tell people that masks don't work, and then they do work, and then they don't work, and then you need a certain kind of mask. People are done with that. It's too complicated. We've been doing this for a couple of years, and most people either have gotten vaccinated and they've probably already got COVID, and they're kind of through it. And the people, I can't imagine who has went for 3 years that was high risk that COVID will probably kill that hasn't come into contact with it. I think that we're just at a point now that the general population is ready to move forward and drop all of this. And they may not be vocal about it, but they're not participating in all the masking, and they're not participating in any more of the vaccination stuff. I think they're just about done with it. And the government itself would be smart to stop fighting this battle, let this thing run its course, which is what they should have done 2 years ago. And simply let it be a page in our history books of something that we as a country got wrong.
Comrade Rustin, please describe your plan to put Soviet-built sex robots in every house.
I do have a plan to put sex robots in every American house, but we'll save that for another time. You'll have to bear with me if you've heard this story before. I'm really telling it more for my Canadian listening fans, and I'm sure there are a lot of them. All right, there's got to be one. Point is that whether it's about your health rights, your privacy rights, your Second Amendment self-defense rights, or whether it's about your right for human expression, this story still applies. And that is that there was an American Marxist politician out trying to catch a horse one day when this unelected bureaucrat looked over and said, "Son, what are you trying to do?" And he says, "Well, I'm trying to catch that horse, but you can outrun me and I'm awful tired." And he says, "That's not how you catch a horse." And so the Marxist politician looks at the unelected bureaucrat and says, "Well, how would you catch a horse?" And he said, "Well, I'd feed him for 6 months." He says, "That won't work. How's that? Was he going to get fat and I can't catch him? That's never going to work." "Hear me out," says the unelected bureaucrat. "See, what you do is you put the food in the same spot. And then every day or so, I'll come and I'll just build just a section of fence. Now, that wild horse, he'll come over there and sniff that fence. But once he realizes it doesn't do him any harm, he'll just eat that food and go on his way. But every day, he'll come back and he'll eat. And I'll build another section of fence. And over a long period of time, well, one day there'll be a door in that fence. There'll be a gate, and that horse will walk in, and I'll close the gate behind him, and then I have my horse." Canada, stand your ground. Americans, stand your ground.
Yeah, so as far as the trigger stuff goes, guys, I think cooler heads will prevail on this. There's a lot of stuff out there in the world that's trying to get people riled up and worked up about things. At the end of the day, you only got so much energy to devote to topics, and if you just stay in a state of apprehension and fear, it ain't going to do any good in the long run, and it makes you lose focus as for what your goals are. Your goals tomorrow, a year from now, 10 years from now, and it is a big distraction from you succeeding in life. So I wouldn't spend too much emotional energy on this particular topic. government generally works slow, and like everyone said in here, all the facts aren't in yet. I mean, this is a document that may or may not even be legitimate at this point. We just don't know. So again, I wouldn't spend a whole lot of energy on it emotionally, and get your mind right about what you want to do moving forward, but don't work yourself up over this. And as far as the COVID stuff goes, have a discerning mind about you. There's a lot of facts out there. You just need to parse through them. One of the biggest problems we have today is we don't get the point counterpoint on topics like this. So that leads one to believe that we're being fed lots of propaganda. You need to be very discerning as to what you're taking in as factual information.
All right, guys, just kind of recap on my perspective on our topics we covered tonight. So the force reset triggers with the ATF and everything, I think the game plan from our side of the house, in addition to fighting them in the courts and whatnot, is just proliferation, right? Think AR-15. So many Americans have AR-15s now. And this wasn't the case, back in like the early 2000s and the late 90s and stuff. So many Americans have AR-15s now. They're so cheap and plentiful that we've increased our numbers drastically, that we've made it almost, I'm not going to say impossible, because it's not going to stop them from trying, but we've increased our tent size, right? So when they do bring these draconian measures, these anti-gun bills and laws aimed at curbing stuff like high-capacity magazines and assault-style weapons, we've increased our tent so much that we have a huge voice, right? And they're not as successful because people vote. People vote. And because of the proliferation of the AR-15, we've essentially saved that platform. We saved that weapon system for the time being. Okay, that's what we need to do with this other stuff. I think stabilizing braces are on that same path, right? So many people have bought pistols, okay, with stabilizing braces, that we're getting to those numbers to where there's a lot of people that have them, and it's going to be very difficult for them to brew up legislation against them. Like I said, it's not going to stop them from trying, but the bigger our tent is, the better our defensive is. The better our defense can hold. All right, the less defilade we have to cover, and the more interlocking sectors of fire we have in stopping this stuff. So, you like how I'm tying this defensive talk in, Doc? The force reset triggers, guys, we got to do the same thing. Okay, this is kind of like California on a grander level. So in California, you have all these crazy gun designs with AR-15, these crazy looking stocks and all this stuff. People in California living under these, bullshit gun laws over there have been dealing with this stuff for a long time. Bullet buttons and all this craziness. They're finding workarounds around these stupid laws that they have in these left-wing states. Force reset triggers, bump stocks, binary triggers. This is all stuff that our side, our public, our people have created to try to counter the NFA, to increase our ability to fire more rapidly and stuff like that, without violating the NFA. Okay, these are all legal ways that we've done this. Okay, legal inventions. People have came up with these stuff. They put it before the ATF. The ATF approved it. They sold it, and now the ATF's trying to say, "Oh no, we don't like that now." That's the biggest problem, right? That's what's bullshit. People have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars. Mom and pop stores have invested their livelihoods in buying these products to sell, and now you have a government agency that came and said that this stuff is good to go. You are cleared hot to sell this stuff, and now they're just coming in overnight and seizing this product, or at least so is what it seems. So this is what we need to do, guys. We just need to people need to get these things. We need the proliferation of these types of products and make them more widely available, just like we did with AR-15s. Moving on with COVID, guys, I'm so tired. I'm so tired of COVID. I cringe every time I see these damn masks. I use an example. I have a chiropractic place I go to, and it's like at that chiropractic place, they had the rule that you needed to wear a mask, right? And just trying to be a good citizen, I abided by going to this place and wearing a mask. And then a couple buddies of mine, I went to the same place, started showing up without wearing a mask. I said, are you guys not going to wear the mask? And they're like, no, we're done. And I said, you know what? I should have said the same thing. All right. And I took it. I never wore it there anymore. And guess what? Nobody says a word, right? Nobody says a damn word. So that's what people need to do. They just need to take the damn things off and stop listening. All right. Unless it's a federal installation or airplane or something, you don't need to wear those damn things at all. So that's my 2 cents on that, guys. Let's take the damn masks off. Let's live our lives the way they're supposed to be lived and get back to normal living. And these people that are walking around with these face diapers, let's just start laughing at them or something. All right. Every time you see these morons driving around in their car by themselves wearing a mask, point and laugh at them. They deserve it. So, anybody guys saved rounds before we close this out?
Yeah, actually, I do. To the truckers up in Canada, I say this. It's a speech by Mario Savio. There's a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you have got to put your bodies upon the gears, upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you have to make it stop. You've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Hey.
Hey.
All right, guys. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Appreciate everybody coming on the panel. I thought this was a good stream, and we're ending just short of 2 hours. So everybody have a good night.
Night.